Right, morning. I'm going to start. I know there's going to be a few people wandering in, but I'm not too worried about that. I don't stand too much on ceremony. Morning to you all, and thanks for coming to this session. My name's Bill Horman, or more specifically, Bill Horman. My background, to give you a very brief CV, and then we'll get into the interesting bits, is I've worked in and around recruitment businesses for 30 years. I was a director of a national recruitment business, and owned a few companies, and then got involved in operating a training company, which was quite successful for 4 years, and then had 1 year of recession, absolutely nothing, no work, everything died for about a year, and I thought I really need to pretend that I'm busy, because I have a particular problem, having lived in corporate life, having worked in corporate life for a long time. I've never had a day where there hadn't been a full diary. For the first time in my life, I was waking up in the morning with actually no point of getting out of bed if I didn't want to. And my office is in my house, so if I didn't pretend to be busy, I would have to go and do the gardening or the washing or something like that. And I'm not very good at that stuff. So I needed to pretend to be busy. The best way for me to do that was to start looking at this new emerging trend 3 years ago of social media and technologies and all the things that were happening in the recruitment space. And just started and really did that for 10, 12 hours a day, just absorbing everything I could. And what I learned very quickly from being a totally non-technical person, but still looking at it with the recruiter's head on, was most of the technology that was emerging, whether it was in the social space, whether it was sourcing, whatever was happening, most of the technology that was emerging could be used very effectively for recruiting. So now what I do is I run events. I run an event called True London, and True Events, we run events in about 35 countries. I work with technology companies in terms of product, in the recruiting space, particularly colleague. In the software, if you want to come to see us on the stand, you can do. I speak at events in about 35 countries, and I'm involved in implementation projects for people like the BBC and so on in terms of technology. So pretty quickly you can get hold of it. What I learned fairly early on is you don't have to know a lot about this stuff. A lot of technology scares people. I was one of them. And that we think that, particularly we think if we turn it on, we're going to break it. Or it's not quite going to work, or it's going to be a time suck, or anything like that. But I learned fairly quickly that actually what we can do is take plenty of everyday applications and manipulate them for our use, particularly as recruiters. So I work with some very, very powerful and effective sources. Not resources, it's a completely different role. I'm going to be speaking a bit more about that tomorrow. But sources are involved in finding talent, finding people anywhere. Because the web, what's happened to us is the web is full of digital footprints. You can basically find anyone you want if you know where to start looking, and you can join up the dots. And a lot of these applications and tools I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about 14. Louis is going to need to give me a signal on 20 minutes because I'll still be on the first one because I get really excited about this stuff. So what I'm going to ask you to do for the next 25 minutes is interrupt me as much as possible, ask as many questions as you want. I'm not bothered about that. If the session isn't what you thought it was, don't think you have to sit on the seat. I won't be upset if you walk out. I'll be more upset if you go and tell someone else crap. So if you don't like it, don't stay. If you want to ask me a question, ask me. Right? And remember, I'm not a technologist, I'm a recruiter. That's my background. That's really what I do. So we're going to look at 14 recruiters' tools that I call the sourcing toolbox. So these are effectively everyday tools that some of them paid for, most of them free, because we like that number. We like the free number. Most of them free, that we've figured out how to use them in a recruiting context. We've figured out how to use them to find people. Probably the most important thing to say is to call this presentation "Cool Recruiting Tools" is kind of an oxymoron. Because no technology is ever cool. Right? Technology is not cool. We just find cool, it's cool people who find cool ways of using it. That's kind of what I want to try and give you an idea today. All of these can be downloaded. I'm going to be over on the colleague stand to do some diagnostics and advice. What's the number, Louis?
112.
On stand 112. So if there's anything from this session that you want to come and talk to me about, just head over the stand. Because that's what I'll be doing all day, talking about geeky stuff. So, the sources toolbox. to kick off. First two I'm going to look at is two tools, one from America, one from the UK. One is free, one is not free. There's reasons for that. And I'll tell you actually what these tools do. I'll tell you exactly what they do. They're things you can go away and have a look at. You don't need to write any of these down. All of my presentations are available online for you to download in the presentation. First one is the Recruiter Bar. The Recruiter Bar was developed by a friend of mine called Ryan Leary, who has a blog called Recruiter Tools in the States. He writes about this stuff all the time. Ryan is one of the VPs for sourcing for Connexa, and he actually figured that and I believe this, every recruiter and every agency should know how to boolean search, should know how to ask the internet for the information that they want. Everybody should, right? So if you're running a company, working in a company, you should all know how to search. But what you don't need to do is remember the operators, because what technology people like to do is they like to bamboozle you with science because they like to look clever. So if they put brackets around stuff and say minus and not this, it makes it look a bit like a scientific formula, which makes it look like Einstein. What I like about the Recruiter Bar is they've actually taken away all of the Boolean searching and made it really simple to work. So they've preloaded 50 searches for all kinds of different jobs, and you add to it your own parameters. So say they'll build the string and you'll add things like location, how wide a circle or an area do you want that, and you put it in and you just ask the internet, you just ask Google. We probably need to start talking about Google, because a lot of these search tools revolve around talking to the internet. A very good friend of mine who was a director of CPL in Dublin, who does a lot of sourcing for technical people at CPL, actually explained Google to me one day in the best possible way. He said, you just have to imagine Google's a bloke. Don't think of it in technical terms. Google's a bloke. And what do you do when you want something from a bloke? You need to ask them a really simple question. Don't make it too complicated when you want an answer. And that's actually what we do with Google. We ask Google a question. So if you go back and you actually just type into Google, don't try and do keywords or anything, just ask Google where you can find a C++ programmer in Birmingham who has a CV online. They'll actually give you some results. So these strings are written to be able to interrogate Google, Bing, LinkedIn, whatever search engine you want to put into, and 50 preloaded searches where you can add your own parameters like geography and location and keywords and skills and content. So you just fill in the boxes and say, this is what I want, go. There's loads of stuff goes under the bonnet. I don't know what that does. Off it goes and finds it. So you set your own locations and keywords, and these searches are being constantly updated. Because the problem with the likes of Google is just when you think you've got it, exactly like a bloke, they change the rules. Well, I think that's why you have to think of Google as a bloke. So just when you think I've figured it out, I know exactly what's going on, they'll go, no, we're going to change what you're allowed to do. And we kind of do this stuff all the time. We go and do the same searches all the time and the results come back any different. And they do, according to what search engine you do. So the Recruiter Bar is uploaded in real time. It's web and social search. So it'll search Google and Bing and Yahoo and all the kind of search engines that you want to be asking questions of. It'll also do social search in places like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all those kind of things. And there's about 100 add-ons of tools that you can download within the Recruiter Bar. So you just get, the other great thing about it is they run webinars. So I do webinars for them every so often, and they're free on the Recruiter Bar. That's kind of how the Recruiter Bar makes their money. They're still advertising on the toolbar. So dead easy one, Recruiter Bar. Just download that and play around with it, because it's really useful. The second one is the SocialCV. SocialCV is a paid-for product. It's a paid-for product. This is genius. This is genius. This is kind of geek paragraph. It's semantic data aggregation, which basically means what happens is the first social network was launched in, anyone know when? First social network? Any guesses? First social network was in 1996. That's when, so it's not very old at all. and it was called 6 Degrees. That was what the first social network. Then there was ICQ, and then there was other stuff, and then we got Facebook and LinkedIn first of all, then Facebook and so on. And that was how social networks. And ever since we've had social networks, people have been leaving bits of information everywhere across the web. But bits of information is not enough for you to cumulatively say this is this person. So all we're doing is searching for clues all the time. So what the SocialCV does is it takes everybody's profiles and all their current information and say, here is one profile for this person in one place. So it's semantic data aggregation from multiple sources, and it keeps your database current. Because really what you've probably got at the moment in your business, some of you will have Outlook for storing your CV, some of you will have a database, some of you will have some quite sophisticated databases, but generally your databases are going to be really out of date, dusty places, not places where you can retrieve information. Because once someone sends you a CV, back into thinking old technology, old transactional recruiting, old technology way was, I wanted a job, I provided you with a CV. That CV is current, but 3 weeks later, or 1 month later, or 2 months later, or a year later, it's old. What you're able to do with a SocialCV is import your whole database, which then does all of the searching and spidering that it does around the web, and comes back and says, we'll keep this in real time. So we'll give you the current phone numbers, email addresses, locations, experience. Somebody updates their LinkedIn profile, updates the database. So it's really taking static data and making it alive. Because almost all of you will use a database for 2 reasons. One, because the law says you have to store information, so you do that, that's the most common reason. And the second reason is to store information, not to retrieve it. You haven't built processes around how do we retrieve. If we keep collecting data, if we keep collecting information, how do we get it out every time we want to do a search? So if I want to do a search for a, let's say, C++ programmer, and I want someone with 4 years experience, and I put that into my database, if the CV they provided me with said they had 1 year experience, they won't come up in the search, even though that CV was sent to me 4 years ago. With this, because it's constantly updating, the information is current from the latest source. So that's really useful for that. And there's about 130 million profiles in there currently. It collects about 200,000 profiles a day. Just been bought by a company called Dice.com in America, I know quite well, and Dice bought it for $20 million. So it's a pretty decent bit of British technology, but it's one that certainly, if you're going to invest in social technology, it's worth having. Next one I'm going to give you is free. This is a Chrome add-on. So if you use Chrome, if you use Chrome as a search engine, Google Chrome, you go to the App Store, you get loads of free add-ons. I love this one because it's called WhoWorksAt. What this does is it takes all of your social connections. You go to a web page of anything, right, any company, and it will search all your social connections and say these are the people you know in this company and this is what they do. And you can start setting your own parameters. So if you hire in the sales division, you can say, just show me the sales managers for any web page I look at. So from a website, which is multi-layer, you don't have to go searching when you find any web page. You can see the people who work at it. It's free. It's a great drop-down to have. It's a Chrome extension, and it gives you Twitter and LinkedIn profiles, all your Twitter contacts and all your LinkedIn contacts to say these are the people who you know who work there. Twiangulate is another one. This is a Twitter application. I love this. I love this. And why I love this is, you'll probably remember, there was a theory that came out a few years ago, and a film made about it. There's even an advert about it now, which was 6 degrees from bacon, which is everyone is 6 degrees apart. I.e., if you wanted to find someone who knew someone, if you ask one person to ask all the people they know, and they'll ask all the people they know, and they ask all the people they know, by the time the question has been asked through 6 layers of people, you will have found someone who's well connected. With social networking, that's actually now 3 layers. So I like to consider everyone's 3 degrees from Bournemouth. That's kind of how I think about it. That's one of the things I was talking about. What Twiangulate does Very simple, free application, because if you're doing stuff in Twitter, and you should, by the way, if you're doing stuff in Twitter, not enough time to explain why yet, but if you're doing stuff in Twitter, you put one, and you find someone that you want to talk to, you'll say, I'd really like to connect with this person. What you do is you put their Twitter handle in, and it looks at your Twitter followers and connections, their Twitter connections and followers, and in the middle, say this is the person who has the closest relationship with both of you. Closest relationships are based on online conversations and interaction between the two of you. So the person who speaks to them the most and speaks to you the most is this person. So it's kind of like finding the middleman. Remember, all networking works like this. Networking hasn't changed, just the location has, the way in which we do it. So as a recruiter, a very old recruiter, I started out when I was 16, many, many moons ago. As an old recruiter, and working in the city, most of my business was done in and around the pub. Not changed too much, but most of my business was done in and around the pub. And when I wanted to meet someone who worked at one of the companies, I would go and talk to people and say, who knows someone who works there? Actually, Twiangulate lets me do that in Twitter. It says, this is the best person to introduce you. So that's a great tool for you to have a look at. Again, it's free, and it gives you things like Twitter analytics, mutual followers. These are the people that you've got in common if you want to share a conversation. These are your mutual lists. This is your inner circle. These are the people you're closest to that they're closest to. It gives you nice little maps and stuff like that. So I quite like that one. I think that's cool. I think that does qualify as a cool tech. Right, Google Plus Air. Google Plus Air. Everyone who puts anything on the web should have a Google Plus account with authorship. Why? Because you need authorship on Google Plus to promote you in SEO. Very, very, it's a key component of SEO. Because Google want you to use Google products, therefore they reward you if you do. So you want all of your websites registered on a Google Plus account. Right? Dead simple. But I really like this because I use Google Plus Air to do live video. It's free. It's like Skype for free. It means you can talk to anyone on the web. Much more reliable than Skype or any of the video platforms. You can record the conversations that you have. You can do interviews, you can do anything you like online, and you can record it to YouTube. It goes live to YouTube. What you can also do, and we do broadcasts every 2 weeks with Polly, we do a live hangout called The Social Agency, in which 3 or 4 of us from around the world will just have a conversation. But Google Plus Air lets us put a viewer on our webpage that you have to record to. So anyone can go to our website and watch it. Right? It creates great content. So Google Plus Air, I just think it is a very cool technology you should look at. And it's also free. So we kind of like that. Rapportive, which is a Google Chrome add-on, is a Gmail and Chrome extension. Also works with Outlook. It was bought by LinkedIn. Bought by LinkedIn for about 140 million. Easy technology. What it does is it collects every email that gets sent to you into your inbox. It then goes, searches the web and collates their social connections. So say, now we're going to go look for this person. We're going to come back and say, this person that you're talking to, here's their Twitter, their Facebook, their LinkedIn, all of their social places that they are. It will build you a nice little profile, and it will also build you lists to say things like, this person's been sending you emails, so you're not connected with them on LinkedIn. You might want to send them an invite. So it lets you do lots of social stuff, and it's free, again. Lets you do lots of list building, lots of dynamic email marketing, lots of combinations of messaging. Combinations of messaging are quite important in the modern age. That I might email you, but I might also tweet you or poke you or do whatever it is I want to do in order to get hold of you, right? Because what I want to do is I want to communicate with you in the place that you want to communicate. So Rapportive does that. It gives me social contacts from emails. I can make it it's location based, so I can go and I can say, show me all the people in my social networks, email addresses who are closest to Olympia, because I'm in Olympia this week and I want to let everyone know I'm here. And it works with LinkedIn and all my other profiles. So I think that's cool tech that you should go away and have a look at. Google Advanced Search, right? This is for people who don't want to remember Google. Every agency should search in Google Advanced Search. Nothing else when you're looking for stuff. Because Google Advanced Search gives you a form to fill in about what your query is. So you don't have to use operators. It will say, so for instance, last week I was with someone who said to me, we need to find some Python programmers in London who have about 2 years experience. Teach us about recruitment, because we don't know this stuff. We're a startup, we're a technology company, tell us how to do it. And I said, right, we're going to start with Google Advanced Search. So just fill this form in about what you're looking for. What are we looking for? Well, we're looking for CVs or curriculum vitae. That's what we put in. Containing the words Python and this, Python but not snake. Put that in, that was kind of important because it's not just text, it's context as well. Because you want to remove, we were containing this but not this. Not containing, we didn't want jobs because we didn't want all the job board jobs coming out, so we said not containing that. And from site LinkedIn, we started off with from LinkedIn, show us just from LinkedIn or just from other social engines that we wanted to do. Just press push, press the push, came back and showed us 300 CV of what we were looking for. Very, very simple. And we only wanted ones that had been put online in the last 3 months. That's kind of important. So Google search just makes your life really easy for searching the internet for anything that you want without you needing to remember how to do it, without you needing to remember the science. And it's there in Google. Really, now, I think all businesses should run everything in Google Drive, because I think Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Gmail, everything you need is there. Everything you need is there. But that's Google Advanced Search. EmailExtractorPro.com. There's a free version and a paid for version. Free version is pretty good. It extracts emails from search engines results. So what do? I do my Google Advanced Search, say, find me all the CVs, and then I'll say, now just get me all the emails off those lists. And test that the emails are, and what it'll do for me is just take all of the emails out of all the results. So I'll go, right, I've got 5 pages of results, just all I want out is I just want the email addresses. I don't want the documents to look at, I just want to create an email list for whatever I want. It could be sales, it could be mail out, it could be anything. So I asked Google for target audience that I want, and I asked them to organise just an email list. Dead easy, using Email Extractor Pro. And it verifies them for accuracy. It actually sends them a ping and sees if it comes back. And it puts all of it.
So,
yeah.
On the advanced search,
yeah.
say someone has put their CV just on eFinancial.
Yeah.
Nowhere else.
Yeah.
It's obviously not going to be able to pick that up.
Oh yes. Most stuff's not locked out. If you want to search LinkedIn, don't search in LinkedIn, search in Bing, and you'll get better results. I can say just eFinancial with this. Sometimes some of the back ends are locked down, but there's lots of ways of finding it. It would be wrong of me to say that. Yeah, is the answer to that. If you know the right package. But we wouldn't do that, because that would be. Come and see me on the stage. Or no, see me in the bar. That's really what I'm more likely to tell you. What the code is. A real good one, by the way. Google your competitors /client list. Sales ledger, that kind of stuff. See what information pops out. Hardly anyone locks their email, locks their websites down. So when you go back from here, make sure your website, make sure the information you put on the web is locked down so no one else can see it. You can get inside most people's internet legally without hacking. It's a bit of a scary stuff. But just try it. I mean, all the time I just ask the internet to say, is the information there? If it doesn't come back, doesn't matter. But it comes back quite a lot. Limiters and filters, exports and saves lists. So you can just create all the email lists that you want from web searches. Do the web search, extract all the email addresses, put them in a nice order, put the name next to the email address, send out a test to make sure that's validated, check my search results, I'll look at the first 20 results to make sure it's the right kind of target audience, then I've got an email list that I want. Creative, fresh, live, new data. Bullhorn Reach, which the Bullhorn guys are here. Bullhorn Reach is great, used completely in the wrong way by most recruiters. It's used by most recruiters to spam jobs out to their networks rather than the 2 bits which are really cool, which is to create a recruiter profile, which gives a web presence and your jobs, and Radar, which tells you anytime anyone changes. Basically, from LinkedIn, there are 5 things you're going to do to your profile which tells me you're looking for a job. It tells me. It's about 85% accurate. you're going to, most recruiters update their profiles all the time. Human beings don't. Right? Normal people don't do that. What they do is they just have a profile, they leave it, they forget about it, and suddenly they go, I might start looking for a job. So I'm going to change the title, and I'm going to go and get some recommendations, and I'm going to go and connect with some recruiters, and I'm going to do this stuff. Radar monitors all that activity and comes back to you and says, based on your activity over the last 30 days, these people are probably thinking about looking for a job right now. It's pretty accurate. And the other thing they have is Engage. Engage lets you share content in social media channels. You set up a search, say, if I recruit auditors, I'll find some audit content, send it out through Engage, but it just goes out in a little toolbar. So if anyone goes, that content's interesting, click on it, that toolbar will just say, here's the 5 audit jobs we've got, if you want to click on it and have a look. If you don't, you just want to read the content, that's cool. So that makes me sharing my jobs valuable because it's actually the content I'm sharing, not the jobs. So that's a pretty cool thing on the share bar. Next one is Itweetlive. Itweetlive lets me search all of Twitter for geek words. I don't search for profiles or bios, because if I search for bios of a Java programmer, what I actually get back is Java programmer recruiters, not Java programmers. Because real Java programmers are too busy hiding, because they don't want recruiters reading them. They're fed up with it, they've got programming stuff to do, and they're getting hundreds of messages. So they hide their profiles, but they exchange geek words. Geek words are those words, think about it, even in recruiting, there are words that we would say to each other that would identify us as being recruiters that other people wouldn't say. And we know straight away, so if somebody says it, that's what they do. This is their job. So once you take your geek words and you search in Itweetlive in all of Twitter for anyone using these words or combinations of words, comes back with profiles of people who do that job. Quite easy. Then what it does is it gives me a list, it gives me all the tweets individually and lets me either tweet back to them or put them in a Twitter list. It's got a really good pricing model as well, which is it's free. And for every 50 tweets I send out, it sends out a sponsored tweet, which I can control what that sponsored tweet is, so it's not pulling me or anything like that, unless I want it to be. The other one, which is a new, it's a new development. Can I just ask a quick question? Who uses Internet Explorer here? Yeah, about 50%, 50-60%, which is good. This is really unusual because this is an add-on which was built for Internet Explorer because it was built for recruitment agencies in the UK. And Internet Explorer was the most common tool. It was the most common engine to use. Internet, it's a brand new edition. You can go and download it today actually. You can download it on the stand, which is
112.
On 112. Yeah. And if you go to 112, you can download it free. And it basically collects social profiles, updates information, lets you export to lists, just sits in the side and validates information, but does some quite cool stuff on your profile. So that's a brand new development, and it's free. Again, it's free. It's a free one for you to use. So it's a real good social aggregator for you to actually say, find anyone on any website, then find their social profiles, then find their information, then export it, and then look at what we need to do. So there's an awful lot of stuff you can do with that. So I think that's quite cool. Colleague, I should add as a disclaimer, I work with them on the product in terms of what I want the product to do, and this is something that I wanted them to build for their own job. SocialBro is another free or premium version, but you don't use the free version. The free version does Twitter analytics, so you can search all of Twitter, it will tell you the best time to tweet. Most importantly, it enables you to build Twitter lists. Right? Twitter lists are far more important than Twitter followers, because Twitter lists let you stalk people and see everything they're doing. If I give you an example, I work quite closely with the Oracle recruiting team. We have the Twitter accounts for every programmer who works at Dell, every programmer who works at Facebook, every programmer who works at LinkedIn, and we keep it in a nice little list called people we're going to headhunt. And we put those lists, we drop them into TweetDeck and see all the activities. So I'm saying, I don't care what they're talking about, the people doing the talking on this list are C++ programmers, and that's what I recruit for. So, and SocialBro lets me do that, and it lets me follow and unfollow people, it lets me organise what I'm doing, and it gives me analytics. First 5 accounts are free on that, so that one is another one that's well worth having. Falcon.io, this is a new one for me. I love this. I got really excited about it as well. It's a Chrome extension that basically means whenever you're in Twitter, or TweetDeck, if you see a name of a person, you can just hover over their name and it will show you their whole social profile. It will show you their LinkedIn profile, their Facebook address, all of the addresses and all of the locations and places where they live, and you can just save it and export it. Right, so from a sourcing point of view, I've got all these lists of people and their friends tweeting back to them, don't know who that person is, let's just go and have a look. I just move my mouse, there it is, go, right, that's interesting, let's add them to my list. So there's loads of stuff I can do with that. And it gives me access to the links, to their profiles and things like that instantly. So it's just something I have on in the background, just works really nicely, and it's a great source of tools. TalentBin is another one. I'm going to talk about TalentBin. It's US-centric really, but it's one you should have a look at. Because what that does is it takes, because there's about 4 products. So there's TalentBin, there's Entello, and there's Guild, there's a few others. They're all kind of in the technical market space right now, but they're coming. And they take a bit of data and say, let's aggregate all the information on this person. Let's build profiles that you can search very easily. And it's very, very accurate means of finding people who don't have really obvious profiles on places like LinkedIn. Because people who are not looking for a job tend to hide their information. They don't want to be found because they're fed up with being found by recruiters. So they want to hide things, right? Things like TalentBin help us find them and searching lots of other places, as well as having searchable data and a profile aggregators. So in terms of source technology, I think that one is well worth a look. Which kind of brings me to the end of my whirlwind 14, and I think I've got just a few minutes left. So what